The Death of Pets with Hospice Veterinarian Dr. Lianna Titcombe. Dr. Lianna Titcombe, founder of Claire Place Veterinary Hospice, is past president of the International Association for Animal Hospice and Palliative Care. Dr. Lianna participates in volunteer missions to provide veterinary care to underserved communities throughout the world. She has also been director of the Pet Loss Support Group in Ottawa, Canada. In 2021, she joined the Companion Animal Euthanasia Training Academy as an international instructor. She's an author, speaker, educator, and mentor in her field, and in her spare time, she runs Lily's Lounge and Patio Bar, a Caribbean-inspired community hub in Ottawa. Dr. Lianna Titcombe, welcome to Unveiling Death. Thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So you have seen people in the depths of sadness as they are preparing the last days, weeks, days, hours, minutes of their pets' lives. And I just went through this with our dog Lucky about a month ago. But my question about animals is why, in your experience, just personally, why do we experience such a deep attachment to members of another species?
Such a good question. I do hear it a lot from my clients. A lot of them will say that they have a stronger bond with their pets than some human companions, and they feel the loss even greater. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think with pets, one of the biggest things is they provide us with this unconditional positive regard that we don't necessarily get from our human counterparts. That they're there with us through thick and thin. They love us no matter what. Doesn't matter what we do for a living, how we look, sometimes even how we treat them. They still continue to love us exactly as we are. They have a wonderful way of communicating with you without words that most of the time is just pure love. And that's hard to get from people. So when an animal dies, it's tricky because we call it a disenfranchised grief in a way, because it's not as well recognized or supported in society compared to human loss. So the grief can be more difficult to navigate because you don't have the supports that you would for human loss. It just becomes a lot more complicated.
I first heard you talking about this on the What Now podcast, which is a really interesting podcast. When animals die, I think about this a lot. When an animal is dying, obviously every individual animal resists or struggles against its own demise individually, I think. But sometimes I wonder if we conceptualize our deaths as the end of us, of ourselves, and that's one reason that we are so frightened of it or in awe of it or whatever. But animals not having the same sense of self, I don't think. Right. I mean, I sometimes wonder, are they melting like the Wicked Witch and the Wizard of Oz, saying oh, what a world, or are they struggling just by some instinctual thing, not having a sense of the end of their personhood?
Yes, for animals, what I find in my experience, because sadly, I've been present for the deaths of thousands of animals. And they don't have the forethought to fear death the way we do. They don't think about it all the time the way we do, So this is how I find with animals that unnecessary suffering, I'm not okay with that. I'm okay with death. I've come to become very comfortable with death of animals and even with humans. But I'm not okay with suffering because I don't think that it is necessary in my belief. With animals, it is kind of a beautiful thing at the end. And I've had some of my animal patients that their people plan a living funeral. And so the dog is there, but he doesn't know that he's going to die soon. So he's having a great time at his party because all these people are coming over and he's having all his favorite treats and he's getting all his attention. And it's the best day ever. For us, a living funeral for that person could be a very different experience. So the animals, what I find is when I come to the home, our service, Claire Place in Ottawa, provides a home euthanasia service because we find it's a lot nicer for the pets and their people to be in the comfort of home and familiar surroundings. And when we come to the door, the pets are very often happy to see us. They don't know why we're there. And this was difficult for me to come to grips with that, because I would come into the home and I know that I'm there to end that animal's life, but they're so trusting of me. And that is a hard place sometimes for a veterinary professional to live with that day in and day out. But it's a beautiful thing for the animal and for the animal's people that you remove a lot of that anxiety and fear when you're at home and you have a trusted professional come to help you. And so much so that there were people that were, and it sounds like a joke, but they were half serious saying, can you come back when it's my time? Because they didn't know that it could be this beautiful, peaceful experience. And they could be in the backyard with the sun shining, the birds chirping and having their favorite snack and just lying down on a blanket and falling asleep comfortably surrounded by loved ones. That they've experienced a loss of human companions that didn't go like that. And I would say the same for myself, that a big part of the reason I got into this field of end-of-life care for pets is that some of my family members and friends dying didn't have a peaceful, comfortable death. It was quite agonizing, actually. And I just wish and hope it could be better for everyone.
You mentioned that it's unnecessary for animals to suffer, like it shouldn't be, and there are ways to avoid that. And, there's I think it's like 10 criteria or questions that offices often give to pet owners about like how the pet's animal quality of life.
Quality of life scale,
and
yes.
Quality of life scale, right. And we, as Lucky was, the last year of his life, we kept on scrutinizing that scale and trying to understand, like, well, he seems to still enjoy his food, and sometimes he wags his tail and like you can get around it. It's very, very difficult to really evaluate it, especially when you're dealing with something that you love. And we love Lucky. So I'm wondering if you endorse that scale. I mean, you who are a veterinarian who specifically works in that stage of life for pets, with their owners, is it helpful?
The quality of life scale is a great tool, and there's tons of them, right? There's not just one. There's many different people and organizations have written quality of life scales. I think they definitely have a place. I think they provide a structure. They provide a conversation opener for families. What's good about them is you can do the scale one day, do it again the next day, and compare. You can have different family members comparing their results. I think it is a really good tool. I don't think it's the be all and the end all. I think the problem sometimes comes with these scales is that, family will go into a clinic and speak to the vet and they say, Lucky's time is coming soon. Here's the scale. Take it home. Call me. You'll know when it's time. And I think that is such an empty statement for families, because I think they really need a lot more guidance than that. For so many people, when they call my service, they'll say, this is the hardest phone call I've ever had to make in my life. This is the hardest decision I've ever had to make in my life. So having to do that can be an almost impossible thing for people to navigate. And I think they need more than a scale. So I even have a whole lecture that I give to veterinary professionals that's called When Quality of Life Scales Aren't Enough, Counseling Clients Who Can't Let Go. Because most people call us when it's already too late, because nobody wants to take away hope from their pet. They're always buying the big bag of dog food, the big bottle of pain control medication, because nobody wants to give up hope on their beloved pet. That I just think that they need someone to talk to who's objective, who's professional, who can be very real with them. And I think when you get to the point of talking to a palliative doctor or palliative veterinarian, I just don't think you really want it sugar-coated anymore. I remember when my sister Leslie was in palliative care, and once she finally made that decision, it was, it was like the skies opened in terms of we just moved to a better room that had a window. And she's like, oh my God. So she was out of this ICU hallway and it was just a better space. And when the palliative doctor talked to me, she was so real with me. She said, you can't take her home. She's not going to make it. She's not going to make the trip. I'm like, oh my God, I wish someone had said that to us like days ago. So I feel that quality of life scales have a place. I think they have a lot of value. I just don't think we should depend on them. I don't think we should leave families out there in the wilderness struggling on their own. I think that we should really say to them that you're not necessarily going to know when it's time. I think Lucky will give you some cues, but we're going to work together and I'm going to guide you through that. and I'm going to be right there helping you make that decision. I think that would be a better way to look at it.
Right. That's good. Actually, our vet, Dr. Jones, did have that helpful approach. But I did hear a lot from other pet owners, primarily like, you'll know when it's time. And that made us struggle even more.
Yeah, I think that's a lot to put on a pet owner.
Hmm.
I don't, did you find you knew when it was time?
I think with the encroaching winter here in Chicago, it became clear. Like, we were like, he doesn't want to go out when it's clement weather, and to have to take him out, he's going to really not want to do it when it's, 12 degrees or 1 degree. So that really helped, I think, to bring him past Thanksgiving, late November here. We thought that would have been unkind to him.
Yeah. Have you heard of the idea of a personal bottom line for your pet?
No. What is the personal bottom line for my pet?
That was an idea I gave to pet owners. So I had my dog, George, who had a spinal disease and couldn't move his hind legs very well. And I much before the end of his life, I came up with a personal bottom line for George of when would his life no longer be worth living for him. And that would, to me, what made it a little simpler than, all the intricacies of having to look after him and things like that. Just what would it mean for him? And at the time, we lived on a property that had about a 0.5 kilometer trail at the back through the woods. And he would go on that every day, all the time, loved it. He would chase deer and never catch them, of course, but it was his life, he loved it. And I felt if he could no longer independently walk that trail, I would need to make a really tough decision for him. So that to me was George's personal bottom line, where he would tick that box that said, I've made a decision now that I feel that, against medical advice or whatever, I don't want to have any more treatments. And I've decided that I would prefer to end my life comfortably and peacefully now.
So we really do have to then, or at least one approach is, especially that personal bottom line on behalf of a pet, is to determine when the narrowed life has become too narrow. Like, I work with humans who are nearing the end of their lives through my rabbi work. And some of them are very accepting of, like, my life has gotten narrower and narrower and narrower in all sorts of ways, in their interactions with family that might be far away, in the mobility issues, dietary issues. I mean, so much what their bodies can do, what their senses can do. And some of them are very accepting, like, okay, this is my life now, but I want to continue living. And others, have that personal bottom line pretty clear. Like, at a certain point, if I'm not vigorous, then that's however they define that, then that would be it. That would be my whatever inability to walk the trail in the back.
I like what you said about narrowing of the life, because that happens for pets very much. I'd say, the life she once knew is just closing in on her. And when it gets to the point where she only has like one thing left, well, she's still eating. This is what people say, she's still eating. Oh, is that enough? I don't think it is. Like, I think she needs a much richer life. She needs to be able to be social and be able to move from A to B independently, like so many other things that it encompasses. So that's part of the discussion with people, to say she only has this one tiny aspect of her former life left. Is that enough for her? Is that what we call quality for her? I don't think it is. But I have those very real discussions with people, and it's hard. It's a very hard discussion. But in the end, I feel like they're grateful that they had that guidance, because it's such a massive responsibility for pet owners to try to make that decision on their own.
So part of the conversation in that What Now podcast episode was how people bond with all sorts of different animals, mammal, feathered, reptilian, and that they can mean as much, like a tarantula. I think that might have been the example, that a tarantula can be as meaningful. It's hard for me to imagine it, and it's even hard for me to articulate it, that one can bond and feel love for a tarantula as well as one can with a puppy or a kitty cat. What do you think about that?
Well, that's such a good question. It's all, they say fondness is in the eye of the beholder, is a phrase, something like that. I think it's so true. It wouldn't hold true for me that I would love a reptile the same way I would love a cat, for example. But that's not for me to choose or think about or decide. It's what that person bonds with and gives and receives love from in their own way. I think the example I gave on that other podcast was that little rat named Starlight, and they wanted an ash return cremation with a little urn. And the dad and the family said, well, she's just happens to be the smallest member of our family, but she's no less important. And that was early in my career. And that was a real eye opener for me, that it's not for us to judge or anything like that. If that particular creature brings that family joy, that's amazing.
Right. So I think at some level, it's like the extent at which or to which we are able to anthropomorphize these beings. So a dog has puppy dog eyes because it's a dog. And a cat, has two eyes, a nose, and a mouth. And, it gives off a certain vibe that you can relate to a human being, which could enhance the relationship, the personal relationship with. A snake, I think it's harder. A tarantula, even harder. A rat may be easier because, it's a mammal, like whatever. And it has warmth, like you hold it and you feel it's a little bit of warmth. I, by the way, had a friend who had pet rats, and those rats were crawling all over me with their little claws on my neck and everything. So I kind of like them.
I love rats.
What's that? You love rats?
Yeah, I grew up with rats as well. That was a family pet of ours for years. They're very friendly little creatures. I know people see them in movies as, sewer rats, but the pet rats are lovely.
Right. Wow. I think that if we had called rats something different, the connotation we have with rats is ratty. So if we talk about the death of pets, we must address Rainbow Bridge. The Rainbow Bridge. And that is something that it doesn't bring me comfort. It's not something that I even like to think about because I just find it to be, it's wrong. It doesn't work for me. But many people find a lot of comfort. And I'm not just talking about how they're explaining the death of their pets to their children, but for themselves, like adults, find a lot of solace from this notion of Rainbow Bridge, which surprises me. You want to share some thoughts about that?
So the Rainbow Bridge is a poem written by a person. It's sort of the idea of pet heaven, I guess, if you will, that it talks about a place where animals are returned to their, former glory, and all the pain and everything is gone and they're running free and you meet up with them. I don't know. I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in heaven. I don't believe in the Rainbow Bridge either, but I think it really, really works for people. And if it works for you, fantastic. I was talking about the idea of a creative visualization where you walk someone through meeting up with their pet in something like the Rainbow Bridge. And you walk up this steep, tortuous mountain path, and it's really difficult. And finally, when you get to the top, you exchange a message with your pet. And my example was a gentleman who had lost his dog because they were out for a walk and the dog wasn't on a leash. And I think a lot of people are quite proud when their dog is not on a leash. They feel, oh, he listens to me. He's smart. He'll stay with me. I'm a good pet owner. And that dog ran out in the street and got hit by a car. And so the pet owner had massive amounts of guilt. And I can fully understand that. And he himself was a therapist, a psychologist. And when he got to the top of the mountain and exchanged words with his dog, the dog just said to him, "You're a really good guy." And he was telling that story and crying, and it was really emotional for him. And he just didn't think he was a really good guy. And he didn't think the dog would think that because he felt he'd made this deadly mistake in letting his dog be off leash. So that, I think, works for me in the sense of a Rainbow Bridge, where you can exchange a message with your pet. Because honestly, I think another reason why I think we love animals so much is they're so forgiving. If we could forgive ourselves the way our pets would, wouldn't life be so much better?
Yeah. And in that very powerful visualization for that man, forgiveness was bestowed, whether it was somehow by the animal soul, the dog soul, or from himself. There was some measure of forgiveness. So I'd like to talk about music. I assume that when you are, maybe I shouldn't assume it, but when you are going through the process of euthanizing an animal, do you use music? And if so, it benefits whom?
Yes, I have, and I will. What I found over the years, we used to have this little box called Pet Acoustics. It was a really cute little music box, and it wasn't too loud, but it had really nice, soothing music on it. We would take that to appointments. We also connected with a musician named Susan Raymond, who did harp music, which again was clinically proven to calm animals. So we used that for a while. And then I came to realize that it is such a personal choice for people, what music they like or don't like. And I think it even could be a personal choice for animals, because there have been studies done to show that classical music is more calming for animals, like in a shelter environment, for example, is more calming than rock music. And for people, the same holds true. So in a final service, a home euthanasia, I would suggest to the families that they would choose the music they would like instead of me imposing what I would like on them. I think it's really nice. I think it's very calming. I think it can elevate the experience and make it more special. Sometimes people will have like a certain song that reminds them of their pet, or let's say that they listened to when they went out for walks with the dog or things like that. So they have a certain very meaningful song that they would like to play, as the pet's leaving this world. And I think that's a nice touch. I would definitely encourage it.
So before the last question, which will be about music again, but your work with animals, euthanasia and so forth, how's that affected your understanding of your own mortality?
I like to think over the years, I've become more comfortable with the death of humans as well as animals, including my own. And in having gone through the loss of human companions, and particularly my sister who died at like the age I am now, which is kind of hard to think about. And I remember she wrote me a letter, a little card. And part of that card said that she wasn't afraid of death. She was just afraid of being separated from her loved ones. And I think that would kind of be the biggest thing for me. But I hope that I will be much more at peace with it, that I found in my experience that it tends to be the people around the loved ones, the person dying, the people around seem to be struggling more than the actual person who's dying. I mean, that's not going to be the case for everyone, but I hope I'm that person where I can be as comfortable enough with my own death that the people around me will have a smoother path through grief and loss.
Lianna, I will conclude with this question. You give pet owners the option of choosing some music for when their pet approaches Rainbow Bridge. So when you are on your breathing your last, when you're on your deathbed, what song or music or sounds would you want to be hearing?
I'll bring my sister Leslie up again just because her death is so profound for me. But she died when we all left the room and just her daughter was with her and her daughter was singing quietly to her. And that's how she left the earth. And I thought that was such a beautiful way to go. I think she just needed that peace and quiet and music. For me, I think I would like music. I often thought that, when I love movies and TV and everything, and I always wish I had a soundtrack to my life. I think it would make my life so much more interesting. So in the end, I would imagine the song Imagine by John Lennon. I love that song. I never get tired of listening to it. And I love the message of it. And I think that our world right now is full of a lot of hate and anger and war and terrible things happening. That song to me is hope, and peace and hope in humanity. And I would hope for my children and my children's children and everybody, my friends and family, that they would have that the world would become a peaceful, beautiful, welcoming place that, everyone lives as one. So that's how I would like to go out. I would like to leave the earth with hope.
Excellent. And by the way, we're recording on December 8th, which I'm pretty sure is the anniversary of John Lennon's last day. She was murdered on December 8th. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate this conversation, Dr. Lianna Titcombe. Thank you so much.
As do I. Thank you so much.
I hope you are enjoying this music by Brian Jablow. Thank you, podcast editor, Bethany Subang Milano. Follow Unveiling Death and share this and other episodes with friend and foe alike. Thanks for listening to Unveiling Death, Eternity in about 24 minutes.